What if everything you've been told about empathy is wrong? I know you've heard it before. Most of us have, that some people are just born with empathy. Some people, it's either you have it or you don't. But what if that's not true? What if empathy isn't a trait, but a state? Dr. Melissa here, happy to be back with you today on the Empathic Leader podcast, where we talk all things EQ, empathy, and leadership. And even if you are not currently in a leadership position, definitely listen up, because at the end of the day, we are all leaders of one, whether we want to be or not. My book, The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation, has hit bestseller in 4 countries, the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia. And coming up for the holidays, we're going to start getting some lessening prices up on it. So for anybody who's interested, definitely take a look. If you go sign up for my newsletter on my website, we will be giving you a free chapter. And my TEDx is finally out. We're at 22,000 views in 2 days, which is exciting. And pretty soon we are going to be throwing some free stuff out there around that as well, and around the 4R framework. And if you don't know what that is, I'll be talking about it in upcoming episodes, or you can go watch the TEDx, either way. So I'm excited to talk a little deeper about empathy today and leadership. So let's dig in. A lot of people think empathy is a trait. A trait is something you just have, like red hair or green eyes, present company included. And they think of empathy as a biological trait. And part of that's true. You know, there is some scientific evidence that there is some biological basis for empathy, especially affective empathy, which is the emotional kind. That is the I feel what you feel kind of empathy. Okay, done. However, as we've talked about, there's more than one kind of empathy. And cognitive empathy is part of that. And that's the I understand what you feel, I just may not be feeling it. That kind of empathy is a state. A state is like anger, right? Or being comfortable. It's something you can move in and out of. It's something that you may be feeling or doing or having right now, but you can move out of it. And we have this idea that empathy is a trait. Partially, maybe, but there's also part of it that's a state, which means you can learn empathy. Now, why am I saying that? Because if empathy can be learned, it changes everything we know about how we lead, how we connect, and how we grow. It also takes away that excuse, right? Well, if I don't just have empathy, then I guess I can't have it because I just don't have it. Not so fast. You can learn it. You can use it. And it's something that you can actually blend into your leadership, even if you feel it isn't something you were born with. It's trainable, just like any other high-performance skill. And I don't care if that skill is shooting hoops or learning accountancy or learning music or learning empathy, right? You guys have heard me say this before, but let's talk about Michael Jordan. Greatest of all time, at least, arguably greatest of all time. I guess it depends on who you ask on what day. But he was cut from his sophomore team, I think, because he wasn't good enough naturally. And I mean, you talk about a guy that's got a ton of natural talent. It is definitely Michael Jordan. He's the GOAT for a reason. But he was able to take that talent and capitalize on it through practice to get better. And that's precisely what you can do with cognitive empathy, which means actually taking the time to use it, to stop and think about it, and to blend it into leadership without just saying, oh, well, guess I got cut from the team. I'm never going to get better. You can make it part of your leadership. A trait is something that's fixed. You're born with it. It's like your height, right? You're not really going to change it. It's on a DNA level. Traits are part of who you are. A state is something that you do. It's a behavior. And the good news is that means that all of us in leadership can create that state through deliberate practice, through doing over and over and over, right? Because practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So you can take something that you want to make permanent, a skill, and practice it over and over and over again until you do, and make it a world-class skill. Empathy works the same way. Yeah, there's parts that are biological. I'm not arguing that. But there are parts that are learned, that are socialized, and that we can bring into our leadership. Research in neuroscience and psychology actually shows that empathy activates neural pathways that can be developed, just like learning a new language or instrument. You can train your brain. So even if you think maybe you're not naturally endowed with empathy, it's something that you can get. Now, why don't we use it as leaders? Because cognitive empathy takes more effort. There's actually a study on this where they ask, why don't people use this more? And people are less likely to use cognitive empathy because it takes work, especially if people they don't think people are going to be receptive to it. They don't think people are going to be open to it. And to the extent that people, when given a choice between a task that takes empathy and a task that doesn't take empathy, will choose the task that takes empathy only 35% of the time. Now, as leaders, none of us got into this because it was going to be an easy job, right? We all knew that it was going to take extra work, that it was going to take extra time, and that it was going to take practice. Because that's the other part of it. Things that start out as work, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Think playing piano. Think riding a bicycle. Think walking. First time, little kid walking all over the place, falling on the floor, banging into things, falling over backwards. But as you do it more and more, it gets easier. Because practice makes permanent. It's something that you do over and over and over and over. Think about it this way as well. If you think of a Michael Jordan, right? And all of the practice he put in and everything that he did to become the greatest of all time, it became a strategic advantage. All of the work that he put in, all of the effort, all of the practice, it became the thing that launched him into being the GOAT. If you're practicing empathy, if you're using it as a leader, if you're making it part of your arsenal, eventually that can be one of the things that make you the greatest of all time. Because now it's just a part of what you do. It becomes a partner and a way of navigating a fast-changing world. And you don't have to think about it as much. For anybody who's ever watched an athlete play, they don't necessarily stop and think about every play they're going to do, especially in the heat of the game. Right? They've just got to grab and go and shoot and hope for the best and rely on their practice and their skills. Same thing. The more you do it, the easier and the better it gets. But like Michael Jordan, those skills become a strategic advantage. So why wouldn't you? And it can be developed through measurable, teachable behaviors. Now we're going into emotional intelligence. Things like active listening and perspective taking and emotional intelligence, compassion-driven decision-making, right? Because empathy comes first to be able to lead into the other emotional intelligences. And empathy is about understanding and connection through perspective taking. So the more you put yourself out there and go, oh, I wonder what it's like to be this, or I wonder what it's like to be that, the more you're going to be able to build that empathy muscle. And it is like a muscle. That's why, they tell us to have little kids have pets, little kids with siblings, because they're already imbued in this perspective taking, whether they're taking perspective of their puppy or they're taking perspective of their little sister or their older brother. They're already building this empathy muscle as a kid. That doesn't mean you can't do it as an adult. That just means that you have to think about it and actually make it a skill. And think about it. When leaders learn to practice empathy intentionally, the results are enormous. Remember the Ernst & Young study from 2022, going back to the Great Resignation, talking about empathy? The survey, it was looking at, what people thought leaders with empathy could do. And what it found was that it increased productivity by 87%, creativity and innovation by 86%, and profit by 84%. There is a hard business case to be made for this. Teams perform better because people feel seen and understood. And because they're performing better, you've got lower employee attrition. Because replacing one person takes 90 to 200% of their wages, according to the Society of Human Resource Management. Conflict decreases because emotions are managed, not ignored. Let's go back to our definition for emotional intelligence, the one that came from the Salovey and Mayer study that was put out in 1990. Emotional intelligence is understanding and controlling your own emotions and understanding the emotions of others. Perspective taking, self-empathy, right there. Innovation increases because empathy unlocks psychological safety, which is the foundation of creativity. Nobody's going to take a chance and give you any major creative ideas if they think they're going to be shot down or ignored or, treated like a cog. Check out the last episode about organizations as machines. You can learn empathy. It's possible. And it's possible to take that and make that a skill that you can use over and over and over and over again until it's ingrained. And any skill that you have now at your disposal, whether it's accounting or finance or whatever, driving a car, at one point you had to put in the effort to stop and think about it. And now you just do it. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is that this starts with self-empathy, especially for my leaders. Because before you can understand others, you've got to understand yourself, your stress, your triggers, your judgments, your blind spots. And what better place to start with your practice than starting with you? You can identify and regulate your emotions. You can begin to tune into others more effectively. And that's how empathy moves from being something you feel to something you do. Right? How it moves from being a trait to a state. And you can do it with intention. You can do it with skill. And it can create long-lasting impact. So let's go back to the top of this, which is, what if everything you thought you knew about empathy was wrong? Because most people think they know what empathy is. Most people think it's something they have or they don't. And most people think that you can't learn it. They also think it's all about feeling. What if those things were wrong? What if, as a leader, you could learn empathy to be able to understand and connect through perspective taking? And in doing that, you can raise the profit of your company. You can raise the innovation. You can raise the creativity. You can raise the productivity. And again, if you're one of my middle managers and that's where my heart lies, and you're dealing with a culture where this isn't normal, it can make it especially difficult. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because if you practice it and you become adept at it, imagine where you could go. Again, think of Jordan. He didn't stay on his sophomore team. As his skills got better, he rose. And as he rose, his skills got better. When you think of people in top leadership positions, they have a lot to do. I mean, there's a lot on their shoulders. And they have to know finance, and they have to understand a little bit of accounting, and they have to understand how the system works. They have to, do all the leadership things. But by and large, what they do is give vision and help lead. That's their main goal, right? If you're on a ship, you want your captain to lead. It is his job to navigate It is his job to get you over the ocean. It is his job or her job to get you wherever it is you need to go. It's not enough to just manage. And that captain has to understand the systems of all of that boat to be able to do it. He doesn't have to be able to do all the systems, but he has to understand it. And as a leader, understanding your people, understanding your systems is your main job. So understand, it's both a capacity and a choice. Empathy, yeah, some of it's a capacity, but you also have a choice whether to use it. Part of it is a behavior. It's a skill. You can add it in there. You can make it work. And even if you're born, because behavior on a spectrum, right? There's going to be people that are more talented and less talented. There's going to be people that are super talented like Michael Jordan, and there's going to be people like me at 5'2" who, I'm never going to be in the running for greatest of all time. And that's fine. At least not for basketball. But anywhere you are on that spectrum, you can hone those skills and get better. It doesn't matter. And most of us, the bell curve, right? Normal distribution. Most people are going to be average in the middle, which means that most of us are going to have some empathy, probably a pretty good amount. And it's just a matter of inching that skill up. It's what you do with that determines your impact. Having it is great. Using it is the key. It's back to our old treadmill analogy. People have a treadmill, but only using it is going to get you results, and empathy is the same. So if you want to lead better, you want to connect deeper, you want to create meaningful change, and you actually want to supercharge your leadership for the future, empathy is not optional. It is not a soft skill because it gives hard results. And it's not just a nice to have, because at the end of the day, all businesses are people. It is learnable, it is measurable, and it is absolutely in your reach. So this excuse of, well, I don't have it, guess I don't have to worry about it. Nope. Even psychopaths can learn cognitive empathy, which is a whole nother video. One of the things I talk about in my recent TEDx talk is the 5 R's for self-empathy. Because self-empathy comes first, because we have to be able to show it to ourselves before we can show it very well for anybody else. And I'm going to actually dig in a little bit deeper about how we build these 5 R's, how we create self-empathy so that we can move into empathy. So that even if you've already got it, you can even get better, because we can build this empathy muscle day by day, act by act, step by step. You can use that to tap into emotional intelligence and transform your leadership. Empathy is not just a word in a vision statement. It's not just part of a mission, and it's not just something that sounds nice. It's a hard skill that you can use. So I challenge my leaders to actually integrate it into your leadership and make it part of what you do and not just what you have. Dr. Melissa here with the Empathic Leader. And I appreciate you being here. Please like, subscribe, and comment. I will be back at you next week with even more. And in the meantime, for my leaders, my challenge to you is to always lead with a cool head and a warm heart.